This is the bookcase that I completed. It is custom. It's made with a lot of closet-made products. So it's essentially just these sections here that have these slots for these elements, and then some boards that I painted and put on top of it. There's no edges that I can hide things behind. There's no back panel on the bookcase that I can hide wires behind. It's pretty open and exposed. Originally, I wanted to put LED lighting here in the very, very front, but I felt like it would disrupt sort of the look of the overall bookcase. So the idea right now is to hide the actual strip in this area right here on the back of the board with the light shining this way.
There's an outlet behind the credenza. I'm going to plug the power supply in there, run the wires up the leftmost bracket, and then for each shelving unit, I'm going to use a T-splitter to go from left to right. The bottom one, I need to go over, up, and then back again to get the entire length.
Going through the parts list first, I'll have everything linked in the description below. This LED light strip comes in this spool, plugs into a regular jack. This is my remote. I wanted it to be dimmable, and so this plugs into the power supply and will allow my remote control to connect to it. Of course, you need some wiring, so I got a small spool of that. This is 18 American wire gauge. I needed something that fit with specific connectors. Some connectors say it won't work with a too big or too small of wire. These are some different connector types. They're very specific for what I plan to do with this setup. This box contains the 24-volt power supply. And lastly, I got these channels that the LED strip will lay in. There is a diffuser that goes on the top that spreads the light out more evenly. This aluminum will wick any of the heat that the light is giving off away. And then it also just makes it easier to connect to something because it's a more sturdy element than the LED strip is. I also have needle nose pliers, wire strippers, and then I just got this little blade so that I can open up boxes and stuff. I also have tape measure, basic, cheap household scissors.
The first step was to move this credenza out of the way and then do some basic cleaning to give myself some space. I then plugged in the power supply, attached the remote control, and plugged in the LED lights to make sure that everything worked together.
And,
The next step was to determine the overall longest length of wire that needed to be on the left side of the bookcase. Once I determined this, I separated the ends of both sides of the wire, removed the insulation.
ooh.
This is an attachment that came for the remote, so I'm putting it on here. And the reason I'm using this is because I can put the wires in this section. So right now I'm spinning the wires so that they will go in more easily, and then I tighten them within the wire attachment. On the opposite end, I'm hooking one of my connectors into place, and this is going to connect on one side to the wires, and on the other side is where the LED strip will go in. The LED strips have these pads with indications of where you can cut.
And cut right down the middle. Damn, that was nice.
This is where I ran into my first issue. The LED strip is 10 millimeters wide, the connectors are 8 millimeter, and I could not make them fit. So I went ahead and trimmed a little bit of the excess material outside of the solder pads away, and it fit pretty well. At this point, I tightened the screws to ensure that the connector had a good connection with the solder pads.
Pull test. Okay, nothing too extreme. All right, let's see if it works. All right, moment of truth. I want to do this right, so I ordered the 10 millimeter ones on Amazon to be delivered today. I'm going to focus on attaching the LED channels to the back of each of these shelves. I'm going to focus on some other wiring aspects, and then when these arrive later today, I can attach them and hook everything up.
So far, we've added a power supply, plugged it into a remote, and plugged it into this length of wire. The next step is to determine and measure these spots where I can add a T connector. For this part at the very top, since it's the end of the wire, I'm simply going to use one of the regular connectors I have. First thing I did was I measured where the first T section should go. I then split along the two wires, being careful not to cut into any of the wires to make them a little more malleable. Then I took the T connector, placed the wires within the gaps they were supposed to go into, and then you squeeze it really, really tight. There are these metal barbs inside that squeeze the wires to make a connection. I then did it at the second location as well. At this point, I needed to put a little bit of wire in the T connector. This will go into a non-T regular connector that I'll attach the LED strip into. Each of these strips is about 6 inches long. I gave myself a little bit of slack with this because the idea is that if I need to, in the future, move or adjust the height of the shelving, this slack is what will allow me to do that. Again, to reiterate, at each of these intersections, I installed a T-splitter, put about 6 inches of wire in it, and then a connector at the end. The slack is to allow it so that if I ever need to move these shelves up and down, I'm capable of doing that easily. So for each of the 6-inch sections, I removed the insulation. I twisted the wires to make them more easily able to fit into the T connections. And then I clamped down on them to ensure that there was a firm connection. Again, in this spot, make sure you're lining up the positive and the negative in the correct placement. I had to remove these several times because I messed that up. Always triple check that the black negative is going into the black negative spot and that the red positive is going into the red positive slots. At the end of each of these sections, I installed the connectors that would receive the LED strip. This took several hours to do. It was very time consuming. I was learning a lot here. I had to spend a lot of time twisting the wires so that they would fit into the connectors. I had to screw the connectors down, remove them several times. I then cut two 6-inch strips for the LED to plug in to verify that when I turned it on, it would work. And this is when I realized a pretty big thing that changed the scope of the project. Hey, this is Josh from the future. In this video, I initially started this project with solderless contacts. They look like this. At a certain point in time, those solderless contacts didn't work with the specific LED strip that I purchased. The LED strip that I purchased has this half dome of silicon on it. I had an issue with the solderless contacts. When clamped down on this specific type of strip, would contact that silicon portion before it hit the contact pad. So it was shoving it out. The tighter I squeezed it, the more likely it was to shove the LED strip out of the contact. I'm gonna go ahead and show you everything I did anyway in this video, because if you are using an LED strip that doesn't have this silicon half bump thing in it, you should be fine. I just made this minor mistake. I wanna keep it in the video so you all know about it. But be forewarned, at a certain point through this video, I move over to using solder. So, with all that being said, I went ahead and tried to put my two LED test strips into the sections that I made for them. You can see here I wasn't getting a good connection on one of them because of the connector issue. Once I verified that my wiring was correct, I noticed that the LED light looks warm here, but when I held it up against the wall where it would be placed, it looks cooler. I don't really like this look, so I ordered another more warm LED strip to use. It would take a few days for the new LED strip to arrive, so I began thinking about how the install of the aluminum channels on the shelving might go. I took one down to practice with. These channels are made of aluminum, and I would notice that they needed to be cut to fit perfectly. I don't have the tools for this. I thought this was a good opportunity to take a break, so me and my best buddy went to the local Lowe's. I ended up grabbing a little handsaw that should be able to work with aluminum. When I got home, I carefully measured each of the shelves to determine the exact length of aluminum that was needed on each one. Luckily, the aluminum that I purchased was 36 inches, I think, so I only needed to cut a few to cover all the distance. I then took the aluminum channels as well as the plastic covers outside and made my appropriate markings on where to cut them. This table is my wife's table, and you'll see here by my cutting methods, this was not fun. I thought this would be way easier. I ended up scratching her table up a little bit, so I lost some brownie points that day. Luckily, the plastic portions I could cut easily with a scissor, and that saved a ton of time. I then removed the shelves and placed them with the back of the shelf facing upwards so that I can install the channels. I needed 2 channels per shelf, so I needed 2 brackets per each channel, 4 brackets for each of the shelves. Here I am marking the location of the brackets and then installing the brackets. Now I want to show you here, the editing is making it look like I'm knocking this out pretty quickly. but this was the challenge. I am not good at using a drill, and each one of these brackets took me 5 minutes maybe. The screws are very small, my fingers are very big, so after I finally installed all the brackets, I went ahead and popped all of the aluminum channels into place along the entire length of each of the shelves.
It is Monday. I was hoping to get this all knocked out on Saturday, but I had a number of issues. I just got the new LED strips, so I'm gonna test them out, make sure that they're warmer.
These ones, when held up to the wall, were much warmer, no more of that cool light reflecting. Now I needed to connect the new connectors.
Oh yeah, that is much more smooth. That's definitely the way it's supposed to be. That feels good.
I then swapped all of the old connectors out with the new.
So positive is on the left, positive is on the left.
The next step was to install the LED strip in the channels. The LED strip has an adhesive backing. I left a little bit of the cover on the end so it would jut out like this and give me some room to attach the connectors. I placed the adhesive strip all the way down each of the back of the shelvings. Each of the back of the shelvings? The back of each of the shelvings. The bottom shelving connected directly to a smaller portion of shelf above it. Here I'm simply connecting those with 2 connectors and a strip of wire.
Okay, so I'm a little bit frustrated, and I want to point out all the times that I'm goofing up or I'm making mistakes here. So I have my battery connector, the remote set up, this custom wiring setup that I put together. I just spent like 20 minutes flipping these wires around because the positives and the negatives were not lined up. Luckily, it's working. You know, the 2 of them, 3 of them, this one in the back isn't working.
This is right around where I started to realize that these connectors were not going to work out. I went ahead and installed the diffusers on the back of the channel. Again, this is meant to spread the light out more evenly, make it look good. These simply snap into place. This was overall pretty easy process and kind of fun. I then placed the shelving back where it was supposed to go, just to get a gist of what it was going to look like ultimately.
That's gonna look so good.
At this point, I began to struggle with how I can get behind the shelf to actually install the connectors. At this point, they kept coming off. Any little movement of the shelf would cause them to pop off. This is ultimately what made me move over to soldering.
And now it's not turning on?
Everything was falling apart. I was growing so frustrated. If I can't finish this, where am I going to put my comic books? Where are my action figures going to stay? I needed to suck it up and power through this.
So this is day 3 of me working on this project, or day 4, but it's been like a week. I bought a soldering iron, so I'm gonna go through this process and remove all of the solderless contacts and then go ahead and solder the wires on and make sure everything works well. So here we go.
I've only used a soldering iron one time before forever ago, so I needed to watch a YouTube video to pick it back up again. I also cut a few strips of the LED strip off and did some practice soldering on that until I got the hang of it, so it worked out pretty well. Every time I added a new shelf into the system, I would turn it on to make sure it was all working well, and I was happy to see that it was. Got a little awkward to try to balance the light and solder things, so I asked for the assistance of my beautiful wife, who was willing to stop what she was doing to come in and help hold things for me. So I really appreciate that. Shout out Alicia. I'm guilty of soldering a few more things that didn't need to be soldered just so that I look kind of cool in front of her. Really wanted to impress her. Top shelf was the most difficult part. I needed to get a ladder, and then I took it down and I had it leaning on stuff.
Hello.
And then we were getting close to the end.
Yeah, come on.
Whoa.
This one. Ah, yeah.
Yeah.
The next step was to hide the cords.
Oh, it smells like the pool at the YMCA.
This process was easy. The channels that hide the cords are easy to cut. They have a self-adhesive tape that goes on the back, allows you to attach it directly to the wall. I put this little piece here for the wire that connects the two shelves, and then a longer strip on the left side to hold all the remaining wire. The covers on top pop easily into place. There were a variety of other connectors in this package that allow you to make right turns and connect longer pieces, but I didn't need those. Once I was finished hiding all the cord hiders are paintable, so I took some extra paint I had from when I did the office, and I went around and covered up all the exposed parts. Now it was time to put everything together, see what the finished product looks like. And here it is.